Hi, this is Hickey with the Lost Samba podcast. Today we're going to go way further north from Rio and Salvador that we normally talk about. We're going to travel up the Brazilian coast to the state of Pernambuco, and we're going to talk about one of their biggest stars, Alceu Valença. Alceu comes from a small town in a region called the Agreste. The region of the Agreste needs a bit of an explanation. It's not the dry sertão which we saw in another podcast, but it's also not the beach, right? The lush beach. It's a region in between the two. It's very hot. I've been there, but it's pleasant compared to the other two. It's like countryside. By his intelligence and by his career and by his charisma, etc., by his complexion also, he must be from the local elite of this town of São Bento de Ona. He grew up in that culture. There was a carnival, but there were also the June parties, the festas juninas, which is very strong. It's comes directly from Europe. It kind of coincides with the beginning of the European summer, and they are big occasions in that region, in the towns of that region, with a carnival-like shows. This happens until these days, and he would have seen shows and concerts in his childhood of big names such as Jackson no Pandeiro. Já lhe disse que o jogo não pode ser 1-1. Se o meu clube perder, olha que o jogo não pode ser 1-1. Se o meu clube perder, Luiz Gonzaga, and a plethora of artists from that region. In the whole Northeast, it's not a region of samba. Samba is something from Bahia downwards. If you go upwards from Bahia, the music there has the same origin, or receives a lot of influence from the Caribbean, from the reggae that you can hear in the forró and in the shot. Shot, people say that it comes from Scottish, because of there were railroads and things done by the Brits there. And forró also, some people say that it comes from for all, so we're bowls for all. But you also have the coco, and you have something that's also very European, probably of the Middle Ages, which is a kind of a rap, or like it's an improvisation. It's called repente. Meu amigão, eu vou lhe chamar agora. Não quero ver a demora, demore e não venha cá. Chegou, já tá na hora de nós cantar repente daquele livre decente sem deixar nada faltar. Liga minha corrente, de repente nordestino, dos caboclos incluindo pra ver o povo vibrar. People will choose a theme, and they'll just go improvising on and on. They'll make fun of people who are sitting around. So there's all this universe of the Nordeste that affected Alceu Valença's upbringing. Whoever's musical knows that the music that you hear when you're young will always affect you, and it will stay with you forever. And this is the case of Alceu Valença. He's very Northeastern, different from Tropicalia, Samba, and everything. He has a distinct Northeastern flavor in his music. So one thing also that's interesting and reflects in his complexion, in his DNA probably, because if he were European, he'd easily pass as someone from the Nordic countries, or a blonde Spanish man, or a blonde Portuguese man. Different from the rest of Brazil, it was colonized by the Dutch. The Dutch state owned Pernambuco state for 15 years, and if you consider the wars of invasion and the wars of expulsion, they stayed there they have a 20-year presence there. Under the Dutch rule, it was very developed, it was very rich. The Dutch put a lot of money there, and the story that's very little known is that after they were expelled by the Portuguese, They migrated to what's North America now, and they founded this little town called New Holland or New Amsterdam, something like that, which became New York. As most kids from rich families who had brains, Alceu was sent to Recife, where he studied law, and he actually became a lawyer. This was in the late 60s, early 70s, but he had this musical germ inside him, which made him become a musician. He had joined Zé Ramalho, Geraldo Azevedo, and Lula Cortez, among other people, and they created this group, which was initially a band. They all followed in solo careers, but they founded this core of Northeastern Pernambucan music. These were the late 60s, early 70s. It was the time of the explosion of rock and roll. He was exposed to everything you can imagine, to the Beatles, to Rolling Stones, these bands like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull was happening, and that influenced his work very, very much. Led Zeppelin has this, Jethro Tull has this, Yes has this, Genesis, all of these bands, they mix rock and roll with, in the case of Yes, classical music, but folk music. So Alceu and his gang, they mixed local music with hard rock, and that became like their trademark. These big rock bands that I've just mentioned, they weren't political as the authors of the 60s that were much more political, much more politically engaged. They questioned the system and everything. The bands of the 70s thought that you as an individual should, in your existence, eliminate the system, be a free person, express yourself freely, live freely, and this is what all their music was about. As things evolved, Alceu Valença and his friends moved to Rio. I remember when I was at high school, seeing him and his band going through the streets of Copacabana with a huge megaphone, you know, saying, "Tonight there's a big show, don't miss it, we're gonna play with the best," and blah blah blah. These guys with long hair, it was very counterculture, and it called people's attention, and they captivated public. Now they also rejected the culture from Rio. They didn't want to mix, so it became a little mafia of Northeastern people. If you were Northeastern, you'd be called to their parties. If you weren't, you're just a spectator, you don't go. You're just a stupid guy from the Sudeste or from the South. His shows were excellent. Alceu Valença, out of the four names I mentioned before, he was the most charismatic. He played guitar quite well. You know, he wasn't like a solo guitarist, but the rhythm guitar to his voice was very, you know, complex and very rhythmic, and he got all the rhythms of the Nordeste and he transposed them to the guitar, and it became very intense and rhythmic, you know, and this mixed with guitars, with electric guitars and bass drumming, became very interesting. The problem for him was that not many musicians could play exactly like that, so he stayed till now. He plays with the same people, right? He was very faithful to his musicians, not only for a question of being, you are now ethical, but also a question that was difficult to find people who understood what he was playing and who played it well. Alceu Valença, he went into a festival of TV Globo, which obviously broadened his audience, and he was mildly successful, but it opened a lot of doors. So his gigs started to be fuller, more people. He traveled the whole country. There are people who went to see him, and he grew as an artist more than the others, right? He was like the star of the Northeastern music. And with success, he became more commercial. So he gradually abandoned the rock and roll thing, and he became more romantic and also more exotic, you know, more like doing, like Carmen Miranda, doing for the tourists what they wanted to see. It must also be said that Northeastern people, the poorer people from the Northeastern, they usually have the working class, they're usually immigrants, they're a bit like Mexicans in the States, or of Asians in Europe, or of Arabs in France. There's a lot of racism against there. They're not seen as equal, although people love their culture, which is the case of the other people who I mentioned. Although they're interested in their food, their culture and everything, the people, they don't want. They just want their culture. So, and I mentioned this, it's important, I mentioned all of this in my book with more clarity and everything. So please enjoy the book. If you go to the website, there's a link to it. As he became commercial, he did like big hits. His shows got obviously fuller, his records sold more, and one of the consequences of this is that in Pernambuco he's like a semi-god. Until nowadays he's still alive. He's like the king of the carnival in Olinda, which is arguably one of the best in the world, if not the best. And he's the king. His concerts there are usually the high moment of the carnival. The song I'm going to play today is of his hippie time, right? It's a very trippy song. It mixes a lot of the culture of the regional culture of Pernambuco, right? It speaks about the cangaço, which we spoke about in another podcast. It speaks about like local superstitions, but it's also very rock and rollish. It speaks about ecology. It's more or less about like the towns taking away the nature and the landscapes becoming unrecognizable, but he has this magical mirror that changes everything, and that gives him the strength and the courage to continue in this world full of buildings and concrete, and that just kind of suppresses nature, not only the nature that you find in the countryside, but also the human nature. So I hope you like it. Essa rua sem céu, sem horizontes, é rio de águas cristalinas, serra verde molhada de neblina. O olho d'água sangrava numa fonte, meu anel cravejado de brilhantes são os olhos do capitão Curisco, que é a luz que incendeia meu ofício nessa selva de aço e de antenas. estou chorando suas penas derretidas na insensatez do asfalto. Mas eu tenho meu espelho cristalino que uma morena me mandou de Maceió. Ele tem uma luz que me agonia ao meio-dia que clareia a luz do sol. Eu tenho meu espelho cristalino que uma morena me mandou de Maceió. Ele tem uma luz que me agonia ao meio-dia que clareia a luz do sol, que me dá o veneno da coragem pra girar nesse imenso carrossel, flutuar e ser gás paralisante e saber que a cidade é de papel, ver a luz do passado e do presente e viajar pelas veredas do céu. Oi, clarear o negro do horizonte é tão brilhante a pedra do meu anel. Ah, he, 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 he. Ah, he, 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 he. Ah, he, 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 he. Eu tenho meu espelho cristalino que uma morena me mandou de Maceió. Ele tem uma luz que me agonia ao meio-dia que clareia a luz do sol. Ah, he, he, he. Ah, he, he, he. Ah, he, he, he. Ah, he, he, he. Eu tenho meu espelho cristalino. Olha que eu tenho meu espelho cristalino. Eu tenho meu espelho cristalino. Olha que eu tenho meu espelho cristalino. He lived in Ipanema, where I had the privilege to grow up, and he would be seen, he and his gang would be seen, the Northeastern guys with long hair. They would be at the beach or in other places. There was this bar in Leblon that he liked to go. He made a song about it. His love songs were much more urban than his hippie phase, and was a bit of a womanizer. So there's a lot of love songs, in love with this one, in love with that one. Anyway, so he was a presence in the Zona Sul. So there was this jazz festival in Rio with a lot of big names like Weather Report and Stanley Clarke, John McLaughlin, Dizzy Gillespie, Sonny Rollins. A lot of famous people played in this festival. Anyway, me and my friends were going to this festival, and Alceu Valença was in the same bus as us, right? Going, because it was far away, he didn't go by car, he took a bus, we took the bus too, and like the five of us are like, it's Alceu Valença. So one of the guys took the courage, he got up, he went to talk to Alceu Valença. Oh, I love your music, we all love you, we respect you very much. And Alceu Valença probably saw him as this carioca spoiled kid, and he didn't answer very nicely, and we were all ashamed for the guy. Anyway, that's the quote for today. I hope you liked this podcast, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.